In this group of videos, we are going to work on preparing our file for rendering and applying render layers, which is a technique for compositing that we're going to be using later. And in this scene I have right now, and just look at it from my perspective view, I have a sky dome that I have of my scene. I have an image plane. Let me just hide this for a moment. Um, and the image plane shows me, that kind of park scene on, under the shadow of a tree. And I have my sky dome that mimics that same space where the bench is back there. It's not exactly the same location, but it works fine with what I'm trying to do here. And I have a canopy or a plane that I used from another photograph that simulates the same type of tree, and I'm going to explain a little bit later what we're going to do with that. I just turned off my a ground plane that I created here, and that ground plane I have a camera actually that I set up to look at this scene. So this camera is looking at the scene exactly from the perspective that I want to create. You see that my ground plane roughly matches the placement of these objects in that space. In my space is not that precise, but it roughly gives you a good sensation of the positioning of the ground plane where my creature is going to be standing. I also have in this scene directional light, and we're going to take a look in a minute to see the functionality of the light. So those are just two lights, a sky dome and a directional light. And I'm going to create at this moment a reference. Every scene from now on that you're going to be working either with animation or with just simply a still image, like in this case, we are going to bring in our creature as a reference. We cannot work this inside of the creature file. You need to create a reference. And the reason for that is because you don't want to be modifying the texturing of the creature if needed to modify the texturing of the creature on the render file. That has to be done outside of it. So I'm going to go under Save File, Create Reference, and I'm going to bring in my monster pose number 6, which is a version of my creature that I have that I want to bring in. Here there is my creature, and my creature comes organized, all of it in a group. So I'm going to just bring it down and position it. Let me just look at it from my perspective view for now. I'm going to bring it down and position it right on the ground plane that mimics my scene. If you have a ground plane on your scene that requires more than a flat plane, you're going to have to model that. Let's say you characterize some rocks or a rugged terrain. You need to model the ground plane to match that. In this case, I have my creature, it's posed already, and it's textured already, and I'm gonna bring him down. I'm gonna place him kind of touching the ground the best I can. Right now he's not perfectly flat on his feet, so I'm gonna just to fake it a little bit here just by rotating him there a little bit. That way both feet are slightly touching the ground, just like that. You try to be as precise as possible. I'm gonna just bring it up there. Let me look at it through the camera. My camera, he's a little too close to the edge here, so I'm going to push him back a little bit and push him to the side a little bit there. I don't want him to be clipping on those planes back there. And those planes are a couple of planks that I just placed there for him to hopefully cast some shadow on that bench that is behind him. If you look at it, those planes were modeled to match as close as possible the bench. Since he is not casting shadow on the back of the bench, I'm not too worried about it. We'll see how that works out. We'll see how we can make it work. At least we can generate some kind of like bounced shadow on it. Right now, you see that in this scene, I have my creature placed there, trying to not keep it too close to the edge, and I have my camera here. Let me see, also put it up here. My camera, I want to have it locked so that I don't move it. This again, you don't want to be working on your camera, your perspective camera. You need to have a specific camera for this scene. In this case, my camera is called Monster Camera. So you just place it around to match it, match perspective and everything. Okay, so I'm ready to start testing. I'm gonna just go a quick, do a quick test render here, just to see how my scene looks, and that I have done a few tests with him before. Let me just close this out here so we don't get confused. Let me try to render this out here, see how that looks. So it just takes a few seconds to go through the rendering. Let me just pause my video for a few seconds. Okay, so here is showing up. My creature is shown there in the frame, and I can see a few things here for us to analyze. First of all, my creature is receiving good lighting there. He's receiving lighting from the sky dome and from that directional light, and he's casting good shadow on the ground, and I see the tree casting some shadow there too, and I can see the benches there too, and it's not bad. We're gonna be conscious that this, if you look at it, let me split my screen in two here so that we can look at it from the camera here and from the perspective view in this one. And in this case, my sky dome is casting, let me look at the attributes of Sky Dome, has intensity of 1 and I have an exposure of 2, and that's because I was playing with it a little bit before we started, just to crank it up a little bit so that I made it a little bit brighter. I didn't want him to, especially because he's so dark in his texturing, I didn't want him to be too dark. The second thing is that I added that extra light because I needed to have that light on his back, as the sky dome is having some sort of like a light there from behind the clouds. Also, because the tree, if you look at the image, you have another rendering here that I made with him before. If you look at the tree, the actual shadows of the tree are coming onto the ground. So and the sky dome won't give me those shadows, and you can see them. They're starting to show here, and they are the result of this canopy. Let me just grab it out here that I just showed you a few minutes ago. This canopy, actually, if you look at it, it is a just call my hyper shade here and graph with my icon here, that, and you see here this canopy is just simply a Lambert shader that is receiving a PNG texture. And the PNG, if we look for it outside of our project here, let me just pause it for a second while I look for it. Okay, so I just found it here. It's under my source images folder. And if you look at it, let me just open it up with Photoshop. In Photoshop, it's just simply a grayscale. So I took a picture of a tree that is similar to the one that I have in my environment, and I erased all the background except for the tree, converted it to grayscale, deleted the background, and just saved it as a PNG, so that way it comes with a transparency in Maya. When I look at it in Maya, I have a setup here in which, of course, the tree is providing the color information to the color, and then the alpha of it is connected through a reverse node. Remember, the reverse nodes come from the utilities, and you can connect it. Look for it right now. Here there is the reverse node, and the reverse node gets connected into the transparency of that Lambert shader. So that's why you can see here the transparency of that, and when you render it out, you get to see the shadow, not that. You can see the shadow working the way you want it. It's not exactly what the shadow of the other tree is doing yet, but we can simply go and adjust that plane to try to generate a best looking shadow as possible. Like, let's see if I can call the right window. Okay, this one. So I'm going to just simply go and turn this on here and try to just bring it over a little bit. I can also bring it up to make it a little bit larger. So that the goal of this is to, I'm going to go too far back. The goal of this is to simulate some of the shadows on the character. There we go. And sort of it on the ground. I want the character to have partial shadows on it and to give me some partial, you see the effect of the shadow affecting in some areas and some areas not affecting, which is pretty cool. And I also want to see a little bit of shadow on the ground, maybe not that much, and I'll probably play with it a bit more when I have my image there, when I'm doing my final compositing. So we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Let me just bring it here. Notice that I have my, that's fine for now. I'm gonna just stop the back render there just so it doesn't take forever to render. Notice that I have my light sort of casting in the direction similar to what the sun is giving me. I can push the light a little bit more in this direction and play it again a bit more to see how much. Then because I move the light, then I probably gonna have to move back my plane a little bit, which is totally fine. I just need to play with it some more. My computer is slow now because it's rendering in the background there. Let me see if I can do this there just by slightly moving it, bring it back. I want to see a little bit of that shadow and a little bit of the light peeking through, so that it's not blocking him completely. I'll probably play with it a bit more until I get it to look right. Usually, I have right now, I'm gonna stop it there for a second. I have the shadow eliminating this. I'm worried about the ground, not too much, but I'm more worried about him, so that I can try to generate the shadow to do the best I can. All right, so I have him there, right there for now. So that is okay, just for now. And I'm going to now move on to create the first few layers. So the way this works is that we are going to generate a series of layers that are going to contain different information, so that when we bring it into After Effects, we're going to have a color layer, we're going to have a shadow layer, we're going to have an ambient occlusion layer, a specularity layer, and so on and so forth. So let's see how that works. So let's start by working. I'm going to probably save a version of this file right now, just increment and save. That way I have already my character in the scene and I have enough information there. And I'm going to go and call my render layers right by that, clicking on that little icon there. And this application launches. This is actually something that started working in 2018, Maya 2018. Now we have in 2019, of course 2020. And what this is a way of creating layers similar to display layer, but this was for rendering. That by default we're working on the master layer, which is this scene file up here. This one has a lot of render settings there, and AOVs and lights, and we're gonna get into that right now. We're gonna just try to create new layers. So we're gonna start doing it. We're gonna create a new layer, and we're gonna call it color. Just color will be enough. And that layer right now is gonna be used for applying all information that contains color. So let's see if we can create for this a or assign to this layer different things that are going to be there. To do that, we're going to right click on it. I'm going to create a collection, and that collection, I'm going to call it color collection. And that color collection, I'm not that precise with the names, but as long as it's something that makes sense to me. And in that color collection, it's a kind of a container. We're going to apply all the things. So what are we going to be putting in that collection? We're going to put, of course, all that is color information of our creature, which means is the creature itself. So I'm going to just go and click on the creature group. Make sure that we click everything. You see the little diamond in front of it means that it's a reference. So I'm going to add that. I'm also going to add the light, both lights. So that's all the information that I have right now. And remember, we're trying to do just color information. So, and I'm gonna go and test that render. So I'm gonna click on this icon here, and I'm going to go and render it out. Right now I'm testing only the color layer. You can see I just changed the visibility. I want to just to see in a minute what it looks like with that those objects in that collection. Let me just pause the video while my render continues processing. Alright, I got that back, and here is what it's showing me. There is one thing that Maya does that is a bit inconsistent, and that is that, you know, although in my framing here, when I have my image plane, let me just go back to my render. I'm going to stop this so I don't keep, I'm going to just save this file here so I have it as a reference there for me to look at. And well, we have in my when we go back to my master layer for a moment, in my master layer I have my image plane. Let me just hide this one temporarily here. My master layer, my image planes matches perfectly my resolution gate of my camera, but in my render it does not. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's not, I just always forget to click here. It's not that bad in reality. It's a good reference of color and information, but I'm not too worried about it. And why I'm not too worried about it? Because the background is not going to be made in the same, put together in the same layer, because that background is going to actually be placed in After Effects when I do my compositing. So for now, I just need to have my character. So in order to do that, I need to just make sure that my character is alone in that layer. Now, you could say that your render layer, you look at your layer for your color layers, the only thing that it has is the two lights and all the assets that correspond to my character. So the sky dome, yes, no, but the image plane is not there. Why is it showing up then? The reason for that is because the image plane is connected to the camera, and the camera is connected to that layer. So what we need to do is we need to make that image plane not visible to that camera. Let me just see that one more time here. So I can just simply just say, I can just hide the visibility of it, right? Which is one option. And let me just go and test it again. Or I can disconnect it from the camera. Let me just go and test it. Let me see if that works out now. Let me go back to my color layer one more time. So it's going to take a few seconds again to render. I'm going to pause my video. And that actually did not make what I was expecting it to do. It still rendered it. So it said that it took 7 seconds, but it really took longer. So what I need to do now is just, in order to remove it, I need to call my Hypershade, and under my cameras, here is my image plane. I'm gonna graph it, and my image plane, I can delete it, or I can just simply disconnect it. You see how it's connected the message to the image plane there of the camera. See, this is the camera. So I'm gonna just disconnect that. So in case I need to reconnect it, I can just connect it again. Now I'm gonna go and test it one more time. Well, I had to close my render window and open it again because it kept showing the image plane. I think my computer was kind of hanging up. So now it is showing, after I have disconnected the camera, my creature is by itself. Light is hitting it directly. There are no shadows on it, and I can look at the alpha channel of it, and I know for sure he is by himself. Nothing else is showing up there. So that means I have my first color layer. He has some shadowing on him, but there is no, of course, no ground plane, nothing else working on. We're gonna stop the video here. I'm gonna continue the next one, creating the next render layers.